Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our study on the covenant. We're going to continue on where we left off from our last study, and that's in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 to 4. And it came to pass, when David had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. So last lesson we were looking at the exchange of clothing, the exchanging of the cloak, and what that represented of the exchange of identity, so that now each person represents the other. They become one with each other. Just like our police forces and our armed forces, some of our private schools, they put on adorned special uniforms. When you put on that uniform, you're representing something else or someone else. When you see someone dressed in a police outfit, you assume or you know that they are a police officer just by what they're wearing. So by David giving Jonathan his cloak was a huge event to take place. So we're going to continue on. He gave his robe that was upon him. He gave it to David, and his garments, even his sword. To receive any part of the dress which had been worn by a sovereign was a great honor in that day. And in the Middle East, it was probably the highest honor that could be given to anyone. The girdle being connected with the sword and the bow may be considered as part of a military dress, and there was great value attached to it. And of course, we see in this case with Jonathan, it's definitely his whole military uniform that he gives to David. When you look at Ezra chapter 6, verses 7 to 9, and Haman answered the king, for the men whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and a horse be delivered to the hand of the one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man within whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even to Mordecai, the Jew. Now, of course, to Haman, this was a great shock and disappointment, because he thought the king had asked him, what can I do to honor someone? And Haman thought, oh, this is for me. And so he told the king how to honor by giving him his clothing, his garments, and parade him through the city. And Haman thought he was going to be the one on the horse being paraded through the city. But of course, it wasn't Haman at all. It was Mordecai that the king was rewarding. So we see by Jonathan giving David his garments was indeed a huge honor and a huge sign of a commitment. And that's what a covenant is all about. It's giving everything you have to the other person, and the other person gives everything they have to you. And that in our relationship to Christ, in our relationship to God, when we recognize our covenant relationship, we know that everything we have, we give to him. Everything he has, he gives to us. But of course, we end up much more in advantage. We end up with all that God has, he gives to us. What a great honor and privilege and responsibility that is for each of us. So we read in verse 4 that Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. We already said to receive any part of a king's garment was a sign of great honor. And for Jonathan to give David his sword was hugely significant, because Jonathan lived in an era when swords weren't that abundant. In fact, if you go back to 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 19 to 22, we read, "Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. But all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his share, and his coulter, and his axe, and his mattock. Yet they had a file for the mattocks, and for the coulters, and for the forks, and for the axes, and to sharpen the goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. But with Saul and with Jonathan, his son, was there found." So here we have a situation where the Israelites were going to battle against the Philistines, and as it happens, the Israelites don't even have swords. Only two people in the whole nation have a sword, and one is the king and one is his son Jonathan. So now I'm not saying that by the time chapter 18 rolls around that that there were no swords in anybody else's hand. However, you can see that by Jonathan giving David his sword, what significance that had. That would be the same sword that would have been one of two swords in all of the previous battle. What a huge honor that was, and what a huge gift that was for Jonathan to give to David. Now, of course, there's more than giving the sword represents more than honor. It represents protection. In other words, here, I'll give you my sword. David, you give me your sword. Everything that I can do to protect you. Anytime you're in danger, I will be there. Whenever you're in trouble, I will be there. That's what this covenant signifies. And when in our covenant between us and the Lord, it's the same thing. It means that while I'm on this earth, I will stand up for my God no matter what. I will be there. I will defend him. But at the same time, it says that God will be with me when I'm in need. He will defend me. He will protect me. He is our protector. Let me close with Psalm 18, verses 1 to 3. "I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, and my deliverer, and my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler, and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. The Lord is my strength, whom I trust. He's my buckler. The buckler is the shield, my protector." And of course, the psalmist is crying out here, "The Lord is my protector. He is my buckler," recognizing the covenant relationship that is between God and man. I look forward to seeing you next week.